2 years ago, I traveled to Spain to visit my oldest brother, John. John lives in an assisted living facility in Madrid. Making this trip possible for me were my friends and traveling companions, Randy and Ann Over. And as you know, Ann and Randy are frequent travelers. Really, I think they're professional travelers working undercover, doing research for Rick Steves. Seriously, though, I will always be indebted to them for making this trip to Spain possible and reuniting me with my brother, John. In preparation for our trip to Spain, the Overs advised me in many ways. Especially, they were insistent that I pack light. Just 2 carry-on pieces of luggage, a suitcase small enough to fit in the plane's overhead bin, and a backpack. That's it. Take only 2 pair of shoes, one you're wearing, the other pair in the suitcase, no heavy jacket, just a windbreaker with shirts and sweaters to be used as layers. And if you've forgotten something, you can always buy it over there. Ann and Randy had lots of good travel tips for me, but the cardinal rule was to go light, so as to be unburdened and flexible. They taught me to travel light. And I believe that's what Jesus was talking about in our scripture lesson for today. He was sending his disciples off to do some traveling, to do some missionary work, and he's advising them on what to take and what not to take. In short, Jesus' travel instructions are keep it simple, travel light, you and the mission, that's what's essential, and if you're not accepted, move on, just leave. But so often it seems we've done just the opposite. We make it complicated, we're weighed down with baggage, we can't let go, we make it a big deal, we're burdened with all of that stuff. I believe that the way this journey of life goes for us is pretty much determined by what we choose to take with us and what we leave behind. And by that I mean, what are the memories and experiences that we hold on to, cherish, and take with us? And what are the ones that we have to leave behind, we move beyond, we let go of? Can we travel light? Let me illustrate. Willie Nelson has a wonderful country song entitled Over You Again. Like a lot of country songs, it's about relationships that have gone bad. This person has been a part of his life, they'd broken up, they've gotten back together, and now she's left once more. And again, he's feeling the pain. Willie Nelson sings, I had my heart wide open and you just walked right on back in. You can't imagine just how hard it's been. I was carrying more luggage than a U-Haul truck could haul, and I had it all worked out. We'd only be best of friends. Now I got to get over you. I got to get over you again. Maybe I never really got over you at all, supposed to be so easy, like falling off a wall. And I started thinking about things that might have been. Now I got to get over you. I got to get over you again. It's a little melodramatic, perhaps, but Willie Nelson sounds like the voice of experience, doesn't he? There are some things that we have to get over again and again, lay them down, leave them behind, travel light. It should be as easy as falling off a wall, but it isn't. I know, and I believe you know as well, how hard it is to leave some things behind. In my life, one of the things that I've needed to get over is a disagreement I had with my father more than 40 years ago. He and my stepmother, Olive, were disapproving of our child-rearing philosophy. They thought that Maria and I were too lenient, too easygoing with our children. In their way of thinking, we should be stricter, firmer in our discipline. When our children were still quite young, my father confronted me with this one day in private. We argued about it. He expressed his criticism of our parenting, and I said, in effect, hey, Dad, this is the way you raise children today, and we're doing just fine. Thank you very much. Nothing was resolved, and we ended the argument with bad feelings. And over the next few years, my father and I never spoke to each other. We always spoke to each other, but we never talked about that again. We were cordial with one another at family gatherings, but the experience somehow changed our relationship, and you can imagine, not for the better. Without ever having resolved this conflict, my father died 8 years later in 1987. And in a way, it was still unresolved. Something that happened over 40 years ago. I still think about it, wishing that somehow it hadn't happened that way, and I have yet to get over it. How I wish I could. It's some of the baggage that I carry. Traveling light, is hard to do. Willie Nelson said it, and I got to get over you. I got to get over you again. And there are other pieces of baggage, other memories I hold on to that I would do well to leave behind. There was that first day of school at Salem High School. I was a junior transferring in. I didn't know anybody. I was the new kid. The new kid. I had no one to sit with at lunch. I have never felt so alone. It was an awful day. A number of years later, there's my experience with a rednecked Exxon gas station owner in East Texas who in the summer of 1969 ran me off of his property because I had long hair and looked like a hippie to him. I didn't even have those sunglasses on. And there's that moment when an old girlfriend ended our relationship by saying, well, I was just thinking maybe we could be friends. And there's that time when I was in seminary and one of the professors, he was a real pompous jerk. And if you see me after the service, I'll give you an earthier name that we used to call him. Anyway, one day this professor wouldn't let me speak in class because I hadn't read the entire assignment. He was an intimidating bully who enjoyed pushing people around, and I should have dropped the course right then and there. So it's another painful memory, like some of the other baggage, some of the trash that weighs us down, some of the stuff that should be ignored, maybe even discarded, painful stuff. And when we dwell on it, it can hold us back, can stifle us, make us bitter. And Willie sings, I got to get over you. Got to get over you again. And then there are those other memories, the positive ones. The memories that when we bring them back, when we recall and cherish them, they nourish and sustain us. They remind us of those gracious people who have impacted our lives. And they remind us of all the good things that we have become. They are the affirming, nurturing memories that we need to bring back and hold on to. Memories like these. As I was growing up, my father was so busy and caught up in the responsibilities of being a pastor that my two older brothers, John and Bill, were like surrogate father figures to me. They taught me how to play tennis. They advised me on what college courses to take. Brother Bill taught me about creative writing, and Brother John taught me to be adventuresome, to be willing to take a risk. I remember them as the big brothers that I looked up to. And they helped to mold me into the person I've become, so you can blame them for what you see here. And I remember Dr. William Rosenfeld, an English professor at Baldwin Wallace University. He was especially into American literature, so one day in class, he called on me, the timid, nerdy, self-conscious sophomore that I was. He called on me to read aloud in class Robert Frost's poem, Birches. And I said, Dr. Rosenfeld, you mean now, out loud? Yes, Mr. Longsworth, please read the poem now. I knew this poem. I had heard Robert Frost read it on a recording. So reluctantly, I read Birches aloud. And when I had finished, Dr. Rosenfeld said, that was perfect, Mr. Longsworth, that was perfect. You read the poem just as Robert Frost would have read it. And then he paused for a moment and he said, "Now there are those who said that Robert Frost didn't know how to read poetry, but you read it perfectly." Through the years, I've gone back to that moment. I've reveled in its humor, and I have been given confidence by its affirmation. And there are other people whose memories I cherish. There was Wilson Lauer, the superintendent of Sunday schools in my childhood church in Columbiana. Wilson was always kind, thoughtful, and positive, and he taught me how to tie a necktie, a half Windsor knot. And he'd be so proud of me today for this half Windsor knot. And there was John Bengal, a friend of mine at Perkins School of Theology, who encouraged and supported me. And I think if it hadn't been for John, I might not have made it. I might not have graduated from seminary. And then during my first 10 years as a minister, right out of seminary, I had two great district superintendents, Maynard French and then Dick Burns, and they encouraged and mentored me, helped me navigate the challenges and pitfalls of parish ministry. And there are also places and experiences held in my memory, and when I go there, I'm rejuvenated and renewed. And in my mind, I go to those places all the time. I go back some 50 years to a communion service that was held every Thursday morning in the chapel at Perkins School of Theology. And while in seminary, there I was every Thursday, a child of God, kneeling at the communion rail, receiving the gifts of bread and wine, the means of grace to nurture my body and heal my spirit. Where would I have been without this part of my spiritual journey? It's the memory of a place and an experience that I go back to. Or I go back to Oak Island, North Carolina, to one of the many beach houses that we have rented there over the past 43 years, because in 1981 we discovered Oak Island to be a magically beautiful place where, as a family, we basked in the beauty of God's creation and discovered God's renewing spirit in sand and surf and sky. I go back there all the time in my mind, and I'll be there again in just another week. It's a memory, a place that I go back to, and I am made whole. The secret of traveling light is knowing what to take, what to cherish and to hold on to, and then knowing what's unnecessary, what will just get in the way, what will be a burden, the trash that should be let go of. When we succeed in traveling light, we have the mobility and freedom to live unencumbered, joy-filled lives. At the end of Jesus' travel instructions in verses 12 and 13, the author of Mark reports on this experiment in traveling light. Mark tells us how it went for those disciples, as Deborah read to you. Then they were on the road. They preached with joyful urgency that life can be radically different. Right and left, they sent the demons packing. They brought wellness to the sick. They anointed their bodies, healing them and their spirits. I believe the way this journey of life goes for us is pretty much determined by what we choose to take with us and what we try to leave behind. And by that I mean, what are the memories and experiences that we hold on to and cherish? And what are the ones that we have to move beyond, forgive, and leave behind? It's how we travel light. It's how we free ourselves from painful burdens, embracing the good and casting off the trash. It's how we bring wellness when we are sick and how we are healed in both body and spirit. On this journey, it's best to be traveling light. And that's what I believe. Amen.